Next in our review, we'll go over the topic of functions. So what happens in programming is a lot of times you're going to reuse code. And even within our little small hello world example, there's actually a lot going on in the background when we do that include IO stream, that we're actually reusing other people's code. And specifically, that's in the C++ standard, there's a set of programming routines grouped together called IO stream, and we're reusing those. So when we do a cout, we're actually reusing other people's code. So let's go ahead and do that on our own. Let's make our own function. And I will make one called say hello. And I don't want to go too much into the theory of functions. Let's just start programming and fill in the gaps along the way, and anything that doesn't make sense we can explain along the way here. So we've got a function that we've created, and it's just as simple as that. So what a function has is two parts. It has, well, actually really more than that, but this function has two parts. So we've got our what's known as the return, and for now it's void. We're just saying we're not going to return anything, and I'll explain what returning actually means a little bit later. And then we've got a function name, and so this is going to be a really simple function. All we're going to do is have a function that says hello, and that's all it does. Okay. And then so we're going to run the program. And the program really didn't do anything. So let's start filling in some of these gaps. What happened? Well, as I mentioned earlier, our program actually starts executing from main. So even though we've created a function up here, it actually doesn't really do anything. This function is sitting somewhere in the computer's memory. So as I mentioned earlier in one of the videos, that when your program starts up, it loads from the hard drive and it gets put into memory. So we have this little function that we've created called say hello, and it's in memory somewhere. But because main isn't using it, our program starts up, it all loads into memory, and the first piece of code that's executed from our program, from our that we actually care about, is main. And so because main doesn't have anything, it just has this little line here to keep our DOS prompt open, our window open. It doesn't do anything. So what we've actually got to do is use our function. So the way to use a function is to call it. And we'll put some spaces in here so we can separate everything out. And like I mentioned before, in this programming language, in C++ and a lot of other programming languages, it doesn't matter how many spaces you put. So this is the same as this, but we'll give some space so we know exactly where we are. So we've got our function that says say hello. And then we'll run it, and then it should say hello. Okay, so that's simple enough of a program. Okay, so what if we wanted to use this again? So we just say hello, and then now our program calls that function, and it says hello twice. So that may not seem very useful, because we could have just as easily done that one line of code. But say we've got a function that does 30 or 40 lines of code. Then to call that function twice, what we'd have to do is, say it was 40 lines of code, we'd have to copy that 40 lines of code twice directly into our program. And especially if we run into these very common things like displaying a menu in our program. Every single time are we going to copy and paste those 30, 40 lines of code in our program that display the menu? No, we'd probably make a function that says display menu. So now let's go into something a little more advanced in our program. Let's take input into that, because right now all our function does is runs a static line of code, and what we can actually do is have our function work different ways each time it's called. So say I want to, instead of say hello, I want to make one called add two numbers. And in this one, what we'll do is we'll take in two inputs. So we'll have our first number called A, our second number called B, and then what we'll do is and then we will make two numbers up here. We'll call them I and J. And I wanted to use these two numbers, or I'm sorry, these two variables in this way because, as you can see, there's another way of defining variables. So we can either write it comma separated if they're the same data type, or oftentimes you'll see it also written int j. So those two ways I just wrote that were equivalent. We'll write write it like this. That way we're not deviating too much from what you know. And then so we'll say I equals 1, j equals 2, and then so when we add I and j, it should print the number 3. Okay, so we have our program. What happens is the program is loaded into memory and main starts executing. We define two variables and we give them values, and then we call our function that adds these two numbers together. Okay, so we have a plus b equals 3. Okay, so another thing to note here is what's known as variable scope. And actually, I should end the video early here. I'll make functions a multi-part video. That way you don't get too caught up, because this could easily turn into a single 30-minute video. So I'll stop this video here and I'll make it a multi-part video.